So, to develop your first app in SwiftUI, you're gonna need something called Xcode. This is basically just a program made by Apple and you can find it on App Store for macOS. For more details, check out my first video by going to the link that will pop up in the top right corner. Once you have Xcode installed, go to Create New Project. Under iOS section, select App, click Next and give it a name. I'm just going to call it First. Make sure interface is set to SwiftUI, language to Swift and storage to none. You can set storage option to Swift data or core data, but we are not gonna use any of those in this one. And if you're watching this video, you're probably just starting with SwiftUI and Xcode. By selecting any of those other options, you're just making it harder and more confusing for yourself. When you're all set, click Next, select a directory where to store your project and click Create. When it opens up, you can close the preview by dragging it to the right or by clicking on the Adjust Editor Options button in the top right corner of the Xcode window. First, I'm gonna rename Content View to Main View because I think it makes more sense. You don't have to do that by any means, but if you decide to do so, make sure you name it everywhere it is or was used as Content View. If you don't do that, you will get an error saying something like Content View does not exist. I like to use MVVM, model, view, viewModel folder structure in my projects, and for that we'll make 4 main folders. Those are views, models, components and utilities, that is short for utilities. Views will hold all our UI, in components we'll store views that will be used multiple times in different locations, models folder will hold our data models, and in utilities folder we'll store managers, constants and more. In this video, we'll only use views folder because the size and complexity of our app will be super small. But when you are working on a bigger, more complex app, file structure like this really comes into play and saves you a lot of time and nerves. Of course, there are other file structures, but I prefer this one. If you want to modify it, you can, but you have to make sure to choose appropriate names or else it's gonna be a struggle for you to navigate and find what you are searching for. Since we created views folder to hold our UI and our main view file will hold the UI, we'll move main view into views folder. But first we're gonna create a subfolder called main, which is gonna hold our main view and main view model file. Once we've done that, we're gonna make a Swift file called main view model and store it in main folder. Then open this file and here we'll make a class called main view model, but because we'll make it observable by writing add observable in front of it, we'll first import observation. You could also import Swift data since it also imports observation, but because you don't need Swift data, we'll import just that. We'll do that by writing import observation right under import foundation statement. Now let's make observable class. First write add observable to make it observable, then create class and call it main view model. If you want to see what observable actually does, just left click it and select expand macro. To hide it, do the same, but this time select hide macro expansion. Once you've done that, go to main view file and right before body statement write add bindable var view model equals main view model. That will connect main view struct and main view model class, and by marking it bindable, we will be able to bind to properties stored in main view model object directly from main view file. Now let's work on our UI. Everything that variable body contains is our UI and it will be rendered and displayed when our app opens up. So let's remove all that and replace it with tab view and set parameter selection to $viewModel.currentTab. This current tab property does not exist yet, and that is why you are getting an error. And to get rid of it, let's give viewModel a property called currentTab. To do so, first open main viewModel and in curly brackets that mark the body of this class write var currentTab colon tab equals .home. We just created a variable called currentTab of type tab, but type tab does not exist yet, so let's change that. Between our import statements and our class, create enum called tab with cases home and profile. With that, we just created an enum or type with two options, home and profile. If you go back to current tab property, we can see that it is of type tab now and it has a default value of home. Instead of writing just .home, we could also write tab.home. It means and does exactly the same, but shorter version .home is easier to type and looks much cleaner. Let's return to the menu now. We'll give this tab view two tabs. First one will be home and second one profile. But before we can do that, we first have to make these two views. In views folder, we'll create two folders by pressing Option Command N, one for each of the views we want to make. After that, we'll make a view file in each of the new folders. First one will be called home view and other one profile view. I suggest to choose SwiftUI file because it gives you a default view and with that saves you some time. After that, we'll make each of those a bit unique by changing the default text value from Hello World to Home page and Profile page. Home and Profile pages are now ready, so let's add them to the tab view. First, add Home view and give it a modifier called tab item. This is where you can customize it. We'll just make it a label with text home, which is a title of our page, and system image called house. To make this tab view actually functional, we have to give home view another modifier called tag. In here, we'll just write tab.home, which is an enum that we created earlier. Tag modifier tells tab view which page to show depending on the value of current tab variable stored in our view model. For profile view, just copy home view with all modifiers and paste it in the made tab view. Make sure to change label text to profile and system image to person. And most importantly, change tag modifier from tab.home to tab.profile. If you want to change icon or image of these labels, you can. You can make it your own image or any of the 5000 plus different symbols that you can find in SF Symbols app. More about that in the last video. One common thing we see in modern apps is the thing called a badge, which usually displays a number of notifications or changes in a tab or on a page. We can do this super easily in SwiftUI. So let's say you have 8 new notifications on our profile page. And to show this badge, all we have to do is add another modifier called badge to the profile page and give it a number 8. If you jump back to label for a second, you can easily change tab label from icon and name to just icon by using image instead of label. Give system name parameter the same value as you did to system image parameter in label. But if you want only text, then just use text instead of label and give it the same text as you did to label. You can comment or uncomment a line by pressing Option L. If it doesn't work for you, you can check your settings by pressing Command comma and navigating to key bindings section. Now let's try and run this app. We can do this by pressing play button in top left corner of the Xcode window or by pressing Command plus R. But before we can do that, make sure correct device is selected. I'll choose iPhone 15 Pro, but you can choose any of the available devices. If you want to build on your own physical device, like your phone, make sure it is in developer mode and on the same network as your computer, and it should show up in the same menu. Our app looks good, there is a badge on the profile page tab and we can even switch between different tabs. We can try to rerun it with different label configurations to see how it looks. Last thing we're gonna do is give this app an icon. As you can see right now, it doesn't have one. So to give it an icon, navigate to Assets file in your project root directory and go to App icon. Here you can just drag and drop it. Make sure it is 1024 by 1024 pixels. Now let's run it again and check how it looks. And last short tip, you can change the way your tab view works by giving it a modifier called tab view style and setting it to page. If we run it again, we can see that bottom navigation bar is gone, but we can navigate between tabs just by dragging it from left to right or vice versa. But because I prefer the original one, I'll remove this modifier. That is it for this video, and stay tuned for the next one.